switching to the next section. Okay. So this is where we are. A lot of people talk about this is a really long expansion. But expansions, they don't die of old age, right? We kill them, right? They don't die naturally. There's no natural causes of expansion. Most respondents in the sample of undergraduates refuse to take, so this is loss aversion. So we hear about the expansion, we think it's been too long, we get nervous, and we have to remember that our brains function in a way that say that losses are far worse than gains are good. So a 10% loss doesn't have the same effect as a 10% gain, has a double effect as a 10% gain. So the minute we start thinking about, oh my gosh, is it long in the tooth, is it gonna fall? We start getting nervous and loss aversion kicks in, okay? But this is the reality. These always last longer. We have a really long one right now, but we're gonna talk about two things in reference to that. So these 4 lines that go up very fast is the hiking cycle that existed in the last 4 Fed hiking cycles. So notice the difference. At first, this one started at 0. It was at 0 for a long time. The other ones were starting at 2 and 3. This one started at 0. And look at how slow it is. So this speed increase chokes off growth. This gives the market a chance to think about, is it okay? And there's a lot of talk last year that said this year we'll get 3 raises. All that talk has shifted to 1 raise. They think that Powell is going to pump the brakes and slowly look at the data. He's just pulling a Yellen now. Powell is just a Yellen replacement. At first he sounded like he was going to raise it really quick. He's now realized he's probably not going to do that. He's going to stand pat, right?
He's talking tomorrow.
Yeah, he's talking tomorrow. And most of the thinking is that he won't raise tomorrow. He'll stand pat tomorrow. I don't know. I don't have a phone call into him or anything. But they do expect that maybe by the end of this year we'll get 1 raise in 2019, which is very patient, allows the thing to keep growing, allows things to keep moving the way we want them to. There's no reason to think that's going to cause a decline, right? And have you ever heard about tariffs? Is that in the news? Okay. So these are all 5, 6, 7 tariff things that he's brought out down here at the bottom. You may not be able to read this, so I'm just going to read it. This is the solar, washing machines, steel, aluminum, China 1, China 2, China 3. Okay? This is the total imports. Okay? This doesn't register. You can't even see it. This you can see the volume of the trade. You can't see the effect of the tariff. The only time you can really start seeing the effect of the tariff is the China 1 and China 3, but it's so minimal that this is the net. There's new tariffs. This is a total of $283 billion. Only 12% of total imports are affected. The average tariff went from 1.6 to 3.3, still underneath our trading partners' tariffs on us. And average CPI has affected by 1/3%. Now there's one caveat here. Because PPI is the producer prices, those are affected as well. Those haven't had time to spill over into our prices yet. So when you apply a tariff, there's 2 places it can go in terms of how it affects us. Either companies are going to raise prices, that affects our inflation, or they're not going to have as much profit, that affects their profits. So what else happened last year? Tariffs happened, that's true. What else happened last year that boosted profits? So the tax breaks were enormous in terms of the benefit relative to the cost of these tariffs. So if you read about this and they say it's the end of the world, all tariffs are bad, right? There's no question, all tariffs are bad. Free flow of goods and trade is definitely the best thing, but relative tariffs matter. So we are trying, I have to be very careful because there's a room of people that really don't like the man. And I don't like the man either. But he's trying to negotiate a tariff with China. And China doesn't even let our goods in. They steal our intellectual capital, and they routinely push us away. and they export all kinds of crap to us and they hurt our markets. So this is a 30-year argument that's been going on with China. He's just the most belligerent and the most brutal in his methodology. And that's what we're angry about. But it's still something that it has to happen. We have to have this negotiation. We have to have this conversation with China and with our other trading partners. And we're still not charging them as much as they're charging us in terms of tariffs. And it has worked. Most of these places, Canada, Mexico, they've actually reduced tariffs. Not much, but a little bit. So this is not an issue for our economic worries, really. Okay, so we talked earlier about relative values. So this plays in here. This is where we are in a cycle. This is a nice graphic, but we don't know where we are. We don't know where this is, really. Yeah, we're just assuming it's here, coming up. The thing for me is where we are relative to other places. So we've been tightening for a while now. Europe is now starting to tighten, right? We've been tightening for a while. Other economies around the globe are starting to tighten. So that means we're on the downhill side here. We don't know how long this hill lasts. But again, about half of our equities are internationally emerging. And we've slowly tilted out of the US towards that in anticipation of our slowing while they're picking up. Does that make sense? Okay. A few quotes. And this is another reason we're not worried, right? Recessions are not rare. Economies are in a state of recession 10 to 12% of the time. What is rare is a recession that is forecast. A recession we say that recession is going to happen and then we're right. That's almost impossible to get. A lot of things that are affecting relative likelihood of market impacts. We did this last time. The big ones, this is impact on equities. This is relative likelihood of event. So things out here, which are global trade and US-China, those are the things that might have an impact. Again, we just talked about tariffs. We have to get a lot worse for that to be a real problem, economically. This is the thing that could be the shock, those relations. And that's unpredictable. That's the thing we can't know in advance. What about Brexit? It's a long, slow, very visible, painful. They have to figure it out. The same issue has existed in the EU since it was formed. Like it's a loose collection of countries that don't have, you can't put monetary policy together and not fiscal policy. And so they eventually have to resolve that. And the UK leaving is just one method of the UK resolving their own issues, but the euro still has its issues. Most people would say that the best thing that they could do is actually become more fiscally together, as well as being monetarily together. I don't know if that's the way it goes. So you can kind of see this is just September through December. The green line increasing, that's the number of people that were becoming bearish as the year went on. The blue line kind of stabilizing and decreasing is those people who are bullish. Notice December 13th, you had the lowest point in bullish and you had a pretty high point in bearish. So what does this mean? It just means people get it wrong. People constantly don't really know. Attitude and emotion around these things aren't predictive of anything.